Hey guys, I'm back to do another behind the track segment. The first one you might have seen I did on my release Now You Know. I broke down the piano lead and how I made that, which is my favorite part of that track. And so I wanted to show you a little bit behind the track of my release Do It This Way. It came out on Sweat It Out a couple weeks ago. And with this track, I was actually struggling to finish it. I kind of hit a point where I knew I wanted to add more to it, but I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted. So I got to a point where I was kind of overproducing the track, and I was throwing too much in there, and so I bounced out the session, put it in a new session, and really helped me focus a lot more on certain elements instead of kind of being like scattered and ADD, trying to throw like percussion in there and then trying to do some mixing. So when I put it in this session, I wanted to focus on this breakdown. It's a second long breakdown here. I thought I could make it a little bit more interesting, so this is what it sounded like when I put it in. I don't know, some people might even argue that it was done at this point, but I wouldn't have it.
Do it this way.
So that's where it was when I put it in here, and the first thing I did was I added the bass lead in there again, and I kind of layered it in, cutting out. So it's the same lead as the main bass. I just changed the cutoff on the filter a little bit, and I also did some EQing to this to cut out the low end. So I cut out the low frequencies and I carved out some space for the kick. I boosted some of the mids just a little bit, and so that's what I did for this layer. But the real impact that this layer has is more so in the drop, because I put it in here as it ended up being a really cool call response kind of thing with this big horn synth. So I just automated that first note a little bit with it's just the filter cutoff to give it more of like an impact sound coming in off of that response to the horn. So I wanted you to really know that something was changing there. So I love this little. I loved how that sounded. So yeah, I liked how that layer came in. I felt like it made that drop a little bit more interesting. Gave it a little bit more driving feel. And so another thing I did too, and this was kind of the main reason I wanted to bounce it out into a new session, was to write a counter melody to that main bass line or chorus melody that you hear throughout the track. And this is always hard for me because it's hard for me to write a melody and not let it overshadow another melody. You know, I want them both to have their time to shine. So I use Repro 1 again for this. I use Repro 1 and 5 a lot. But this melody is actually pretty simple. The way I made it more interesting is I just did some MIDI mapping. So I have a little MPK mini, and it's really nice for traveling. I have it on the road with me a lot, but I always MIDI map these fun little knobs up here, and it's just Command M, and then you'll see all of these different things you can map to. So if you just click on one of them, let's see here, you click on one and then you twist, then it will be all mapped up here on this side. So basically what I do with this mapping is, I'll show the automation again, is I'll just like set it on a loop, and oftentimes I'll map multiple different things, and I'll just kind of sit there and let that loop run, and I'll just do twisting and record that automation in, and I'll do it until I either like the sound I have or the effect, and sometimes I'll even take it even further and bounce that down and resample it in the MIDI. But for this one, I thought the automation gave it this really cool, like wonky, almost like an underwater sound. And it really sounded cool. Drop in behind. So that element is really only in the breakdown right there. And then the other thing that I did to add, I did this little, these little hits in here, basically just to, these are almost like a call and response with some of the notes in this bass line melody. I'll play that again. So this was really cool. Just a little tiny plus. And one cool thing you can do, I forgot to show you on this little counter melody over here, is that if you hit shift and you click on your MIDI files that are above, like overlapping each other like that, you can come down here in this window and hover over the two of them, and you can kind of see how they interact. So this helps me a lot when I am writing counter melodies, seeing the overlaps and being able to like change velocities or shift notes a little bit. You can even like shift them slightly off of each other so they almost have a little bit of natural swing built in. But yeah, this was like a easy way for me to double check that it was making sense. The notes overlapping were making sense and stuff. So you can also do that. So I did that here. You just hit shift, command, come down here. You could see like the little hits coming in over different notes. So this was like a really cool accent to that bass line. So those were the main things I added, and then there's one more cool thing I did. It was actually an accident, and I love when these things happen. I call them happy accidents. I think a lot of producers do this too. It's like sometimes the things you do as a mistake are some of the coolest parts of a track, and I was just messing around with that mid layer that I had put in here, and I ended up taking my hand and just swiping it across my keyboard, swiping it down my keyboard, and it came to this really wonky, really wonky effect. I love that little tail of it. So I just left it in there right before the drop. So yeah, that's what I pretty much did to finish this track. And these little elements that I added towards the end are some of my favorites. But I think the main takeaway here is that I had to stop myself from destroying the idea that I built and loved in the first place. So putting it in this new session really helped make that happen. So after this, just bounce these out as stems and mix them in with the original session. So yeah, this is how Do It This Way got finished and came to life. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Peace.